Welcome to Friday Friends, RI Elder Info's weekly look at the organizations and individuals providing resources for Rhode Island seniors, caregivers, and professionals.
I'm Burton, Executive Director of RI Elder Info and weekly host of Friday Friends, where every week I bring you information that you or someone you know needs to know about. So please hit the like button, the share button, the follow button, all those social media cues that say, hey, check this out. Because today we're talking about something that is impacting roughly 1 in 4 Rhode Islanders. So somebody you know is definitely impacted by what we're having a conversation about with my friend Brooke. So years without the support of our sponsors and our donors. So a huge thank you to our annual sponsor, United Healthcare. Of course, 321 Media, who is working behind the scenes to make this look great, even on those days where I'm a little tongue-tied, as well as our good friends at Careforth. Here's a message from Careforth.
Caregiving, first of all, is the most selfless act. You're just on 24/7. In order to do all that, you need someone to make sure that you, as the caregiver, are taking care of yourself. And nobody cares for your family like you do. You love them. The whole program is amazing. To get paid for something that you would do even if you weren't getting paid. You're not just one person, but you have a whole team behind you, and we're all here to help.
Welcome, Brooke. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Please share with everybody, where are you from? What is your role? All those fun things, because I know when I first met you, the program was still kind of new, but when we sat down to have coffee that first time, we chatted like we've been friends forever. So I want folks to get to know you.
We did. So thank you. So my name is Brooke Mignona. I am the Director of Community Partnerships and Sales here at Careforth. I cover the Northeast, so that's Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. I live in Central Massachusetts, so kind of right in the middle of all three. Been with Careforth 3 years now. As an organization, believe it or not, we've been in business for 26 years. So yeah, we were one of the first to provide structured family caregiving. And I'm super happy to be part of the organization because what we're doing is, again, that outreach and education and letting caregivers know they have a resource, right? They have a voice. There are tools and resources to support them. They're not alone. When you first started talking, you were like, gosh, there's, however many, 206,000 caregivers in Rhode Island. Nationally in the United States, there's 63 million informal caregivers. Those family members and friends are doing so much to help their community out. So, I think as caregivers, we bond with other caregivers, right? It's a unseen little army that is there truly doing the work, providing the care, providing the love and support that helps people through all sorts of different challenges.
I saw a report from AARP that said family caregivers or unpaid caregivers are providing the equivalent of $2.1 billion in unpaid care. That to me is crazy. But I think sometimes people don't necessarily identify themselves as a caregiver. And if 1 in 4, like you go out to dinner with another couple, somebody at the table is a caregiver. So what does caregiving look like if we're not necessarily recognizing ourselves as a caregiver?
Yeah, so it's so true. There's a quote by First Lady Rosalind Carter that we talk about a lot because it's, you will either be a caregiver, you are currently a caregiver, you will be a caregiver, you will need a caregiver, right? So we all fall into those buckets of either being a caregiver or in the future, or, maybe you have been. So being a caregiver can be all sorts of roles, right? It can be a parent caring for a child. I have, teenage boys now, but a parent is a caregiver in their own right. But
don't let those teenage boys fool you. They still need mom and they still need a caregiver, despite what they try to say.
Maybe more so than ever, right? It's like, oh my goodness. But, when you think of a family caregiver outside of that kind of normal parenting role, you think of someone that's helping mom, and maybe they're helping mom, she's aged, and maybe it's just picking up her mail at the post office or picking up medications at CVS. It can be smaller things that truly make an impact and help that person remain independent and safe. But over time, oftentimes those roles and responsibilities grow and they just kind of multiply, right? Overnight, and you don't even realize it. So yeah, maybe you started with cutting grandma's lawn, right? Because you know what, grandma, I'm going to take care of doing your lawn. So once a week, that grandchild goes over to the home and mows the lawn. Well, when they're there, they're like, gosh, grandma doesn't look quite like she used to, or something's off. I'm going to do dinner with grandma tonight. And then we're going to see that she didn't eat as much. And when you went to cook, there wasn't as many groceries in the house. So, okay, grandma, I'm going to do the lawn on Thursdays, but I'm going to grocery shop on Sundays. And then all of a sudden you're helping with meal preparation. And again, it's all things out of care, love, concern, all good. It's just over time that role evolves because the person's needs might change. Someone's all of a sudden had a hospitalization and that person had been totally independent. It could be an adult sibling, right, that you're helping care for. It could be a good friend. And they were totally independent, but they've had a major life change. They might have had a stroke or a major surgery or complication. And all of a sudden, that independent person can no longer be home alone. And you move in because, you know what, I'm going to have mom move in with me, or I'm going to move in with mom because she can't be alone. And that role evolves. And sometimes it's helping with showering and it's helping with, all sorts of activities of daily living. And I think a lot of times when people need that hands-on physical care, that's when they understand and define the role a little bit more. But there are so many times where the caregivers that we support don't even identify themselves as caregivers, right? So they are helping mom shower. And it's funny, some of the conversations we have will be out, whether it's in the community or at, someone's been in the hospital and a case manager may call us and say, hey, we have this family that could use some additional support. And when we talk to the caregiver, they're like, no, mom, no, she's good. I'm not a caregiver. Like, I don't think I'm going to qualify for the program. She does great. And so then we have a conversation similar to how you and I had that conversation the first day. And when you really start talking about it, and you'll say, oh, okay, that's fantastic. That, the case manager can give us a call. Do you guys live together? Well, yes, we do. Okay. Do you, so is mom totally independent? Like, does she get up in the morning on her own and come down for coffee? Well, no, she's got some problems with her legs. So in the morning, I help her get up and walk her to the bathroom. Okay, that's great. That makes a big difference. You're, helping her make sure she doesn't fall. Yeah. And okay, so once she's up and moving, she feels pretty good. Yeah, she does. I definitely, well, she needs some help maybe getting in and out of the shower. And so as you talk, you hear that person, again, doesn't identify themselves as a caregiver, but they're helping that person get up and moving for the day with their ambulation. They're helping them get in and out of the shower. They're helping them, one of the caregivers I was talking with was like, no, they're independent. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Well, they can't, someone struggled raising their arms, so they needed help getting dressed, right? So they needed someone to help them, and dexterity might be hard. Well, I did. I mean, I help get the sweater on and I help with the buttons, and I'm like, that's great. Well, and they're unsteady, so I help, just all I have to do is help get their pants on. Again, that's great. You're helping that person be as independent as possible. But again, those tasks and those responsibilities just increase over time oftentimes. Certainly there's the opposite too, right? That that person may have had that major medical event and you're helping through that transition, but then they're back to themselves, which is great. So that kind of falls into that you have been a caregiver role, not that you're currently a caregiver, but all of those things that just kind of grow overnight help family members remain independent or remain out in the community. But oftentimes that caregiver doesn't even realize that they've taken on all these additional responsibilities. And although wonderful and helpful in all of that, can also be very stressful for that caregiver, because that time and those things that they're doing, they're no longer doing other things that they might have done for themselves, or for, their spouses or their work. And, jobs are changing because I can't be at work all the time anymore because I can't, maybe mom or dad has a new diagnosis of dementia and can't be left alone for safety. And what does that look like? And how do you navigate all those things? It's overwhelming.
Absolutely. And, you bring up an interesting aspect too, that, say mom is the caregiver for dad and dad has dementia. And what research finds, what real life shows, is a lot of times the person who is the caregiver for the individual with dementia gets sick, they get burnt out. And then all of a sudden, while, mom is recovering in the hospital, that family is like, holy moly, like who's looking after dad? Whereas, maybe mom and dad have been sharing a house with you, but mom was the one who was always in charge of dad, because they're husband and wife, and that's kind of how things work. And so all of a sudden that caregiver is not well and the family's kind of thrown into this tumultuous situation. It's like, we have to really rethink this, and we think of caregiving in these crisis situations. But one of the things that, as you shared, I was thinking, like, sometimes it's those little things that just start stacking up. It's, I'll cut the grass because, Pop, you're 87. You shouldn't be out in the heat with the push lawnmower. Come on now, and then it just, well, who's doing the laundry? Because you probably shouldn't be going down the stairs to the basement, like, and then it keeps going. And maybe we don't look in the mirror and say we are caregivers, but we are.
We are.
And if somebody out there is a caregiver, you bring up one of the challenges is if you're taking time to provide that care, it means you're not doing something else. And I talk to a lot of people who have to change their work schedules or leave work or scale back the number of hours so that they can take care of their loved ones. Is there a way for a family member who's a caregiver to get paid to be a caregiver for their loved one who lives with them?
Yes, and that is what we do here at Careforth. So we are a caregiver support company, and our role is to support caregivers that are caring for loved ones in the community. For the compensation, if you will, and that financial support, there's eligibility criteria, right? So not every caregiver is going to qualify for the program. And every state is different. So if you're listening from other states, not every state has these same programs, but certainly you can always reach out and ask us if you're from another state as well. But in Rhode Island specifically, the program itself is through the shared living. So it's a state funded program, and it's through the shared living division, if you will, in Rhode Island. And the program that we support and that we are contracted for is the Right at Home program. So the program itself is designed for caregivers that are caring for loved ones 18 and older. So that consumer or that person out in the community, the one that's being cared for, needs to be over 18. And they need to have, medical and or mental health diagnoses that truly warrant the need for a caregiver, right? So it's not just a lot of people have diagnoses, but they don't need a caregiver, right? They can be left alone and independent and navigate that. So we go through that kind of clinical eligibility piece. So it's not something that the family member has to say, well, I need to know this before I call. We talk with them about it. what is that diagnosis? We work with physicians and get some documentation as well. We work then with the state. So the consumer and caregiver have to reside together. So if they live in the same home, and proof of residency, right, that they reside in the same home. So that caregiver needs to be there and responsible, if you will, for that consumer, that community member, 24 hours a day. That does not mean the caregiver cannot leave the home, but there needs to be a safe plan should they leave the home. Sometimes it's like you said, you were talking about the example you gave of the husband and wife, but they live with their adult daughter. So that daughter may go to work, and she might be gone 4 or 5 hours X number of days a week, but the alternate, so that spouse may be there that is caring for that loved one while that other person is at work. So we work through that all with them and talk through that with them to see if they meet program eligibility. And then we work with the state as well. So the consumer needs to qualify for Medicaid and then the long-term services and support, LTSS. So Deb, I know you've educated a whole lot about what's in Rhode Island. So again, that's a lengthy process, but we have Medicaid support specialists that assist families that are applying and help them just with the follow-up. And there's a lot of pieces and a lot of information that needs to be gathered and submitted to the state. So we can help them kind of navigate that because it can be very overwhelming as to what do I need and when and how. In Rhode Island, wanted to also make sure people were aware that a legal spouse, so someone that you're legally married to, does not qualify for the program. It is for those that are not legally married or legal guardians. So legal guardians. So if you're caring for maybe an adult disabled child or potentially like an adult disabled sibling, if you are the legal guardians are not eligible to be paid caregivers. Again, that's a conversation that we have with families. Oftentimes there's someone else in the home that might be able to fulfill that role or the caregiver role. And then lastly, they cannot be the financial power of attorney.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense because if you're the person who is legally responsible for that other individual, whether that be as a spouse, because there really are some legalities around being someone's spouse, and a guardian or someone who's responsible for handling somebody's money. Those are some conflicts of interest that, you can't really work around. Like those are laws. So if somebody wanted to apply for this program, can they call your office and have somebody help them, or do they call the Department of Human Services and apply? How do they learn more?
Absolutely. They definitely can. They can call us. So I'm pulling up, I just should have had that number in front of me. I have the main number, but I also have Leticia's number, my colleague that covers and supports Rhode Island. So with that, they can certainly call us directly. We will help them, navigate and educate them on the program. A lot of people do go directly through the state, and that is okay too. So whatever their preference, but certainly if they call us, they're going to have that live person to just really talk through the program and educate them on the program, and see if it's something they want to explore further. And then we will connect them, obviously with the state if they don't already have Medicaid and LTSS. And then the other piece is that I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about was just that what does that care team do? So we talked through a lot about eligibility and who is eligible and how do they qualify, but our care team, it consists of nurses and care managers. So those nurses and care managers are coaches, if you will. They support that caregiver. They help them navigate challenges. Most caregivers are not healthcare professionals. They don't know. Your loved one gets a new diagnosis of heart failure. Well, what does that mean? What do I need to look out for? What do I do? Or new medications or new inhalers. How do I do that? What does it look like? And what should I keep my eyes out for? So our care team coaches, educates. We've got a great app as well outside of our live team members that are, in the home visiting and then there to support answer questions telephonically or via our app, again, and in person. But we have resources and tools, thousands of educational resources that we can send them that sometimes they can read an article or watch a video, and we'll help them get those other, education points. Or if they're burnt out, right? Caregiver burnout's a real thing. We talked about that early on. How can we help that caregiver get some resources? Maybe it's a meditation video. Maybe it's, hey, here's a community support group, or, social determinants of health are a real thing. Helping, with food insecurities. Where's a local food pantry? Where's another resource that we can get? So our team is, again, coaching, guiding, offering resources and connection points. So we're there to help caregivers navigate. And again, so we have two numbers, and Deb, I can share them, but we can also
Leticia's number, so people can call and reach Leticia directly. She's at that 401-662-4928 number, and that goes right to her directly. So that way, like, people are reaching a real human being, because I always appreciate being able to direct people who have questions or concerns to like a real person. So that's her phone number is the 662-4928 401 area code. And then that way people can reach out to her. They can say, hey, I saw you on Friday Friends. I saw Brooke on Friday Friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and we can be a resource. Yeah. And it's okay if this program isn't the right program for you. I always speak about Leticia and her awareness of what is in Rhode Island. She has lived in Rhode Island and worked in Rhode Island for years, and she has so many connections with other community resources. So if we're not the right fit, that is okay. She's going to try to help you find a resource that is. And oftentimes we might lean into Deb, say, hey, Deb, do you know any other resources? So our goal is to truly support community members. So if we're not the solution, that is okay. We're going to try to help you find one.
Absolutely. And I think, it's all of us working together. And the fact that there's a team that, you're right. People are not necessarily born knowing what to do as a caregiver. It could be, oh my God, how do I get these compression stockings on and off their legs?
That's a hard job.
Somebody who's skilled can be like, oh, here's the trick.
Right, exactly.
Like, that can make a huge difference. Like, it's one of those things that's like, can be very nudgy, that if it becomes too much, too difficult, people may not do it. And that can have a medical impact that we don't often think about. And so having somebody to call up and say, oh, the doctor just gave me these stockings and they look like they're the size of a 4-year-old's leg. How am I putting this on, my spouse's leg that's swollen? Like, what am I doing? Or they're paralyzed now on one side. Which arm do I put through the shirt first? Like, some of those things where you're not born knowing, and to have that resource to be able to call out and say, I don't know. And to have it be a welcoming environment where you're not, what do you mean you don't know? Like, that makes all the difference in the world, because we all have to look out for each other. Like, we are all in this world together.
Absolutely. And again, that role and that goal for us is to truly support that caregiver so they can provide the best level of care to their loved one. The loved one, that consumer, that community member is at the center of the care plan. Like, our job is to support that caregiver so that they can both have the best quality of life, best outcomes, hopefully less hospitalizations. And it truly has been found through some outcome studies that when a caregiver is supported, that loved one that they're caring for has much better outcomes, less hospitalizations, less injuries, falls. They're having a better quality of life. And when that caregiver is supported, you and I talked about early on, and when the first time we met, caregivers oftentimes have more medical incidents and may pass before the one they're caring for because they're not caring for themselves. So how do we get those caregivers the support and resources that they need so that they can also care for themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brooke, I'm so glad you took the time to come on. I asked you to come on for a short period of time, and then I've just sucked your time away because this is but It's such a great conversation, and I could talk to you literally for hours about this. This is awesome. So I really appreciate you staying on longer. This is awesome.
And thank you for having me, and coffee sometime soon. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Don't hesitate to reach out should you guys need anything.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Everybody, if you think about yourself, your 3 closest friends, statistically, one of you is a caregiver, maybe for the children, maybe for a loved one who has a disability, maybe for a parent, grandparent, in-law. We are all being impacted. And this program is a program that will allow a family member that is living with the person who needs care to get paid to do what they're already doing. Now, obviously, there's qualifications and eligibilities, but on average, 1 in 4 Rhode Islanders is a caregiver. And these unpaid caregivers, all of those hours that are being put in every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, where we are caring for our loved ones, that is actually resulting in a cost savings to all of us of $2.1 billion. That is a tremendous amount of money that is being saved, but the reality is we must support our caregivers. And that includes making sure that they get paid so that they can afford their own life. So I am glad that you have stayed with me for this important conversation because you know someone who is a caregiver. I hope that you share this video out with as many people as possible to get folks connected to resources that are available. I am glad that you joined me. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. In the meantime, be well and be kind.